Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So Blizzard has now revealed all of the cards for the Rise of Shadows expansion. So I will be covering all of them. In this video I'm just going to cover the class cards that have been revealed. I'll do another video covering the neutrals because there's around 50 cards that have been revealed just now. So I don't want to make the video too long. So let's go through these quite quickly. And we'll start with the Shaman class. And Merlok Shaman is coming back, and actually they've released some or announced some really pretty strong Merlok cards. I think Shaman will be able to play this. The first one being the legendary, the one that knits it together. This is called Scargill. He's a 4-mana 4/4 Merlok, and he has Merlok's cost 1. He has the effect of your Merlok's cost 1. So this is really quite good in a Merlok deck because what you want to be doing is putting loads of Merloks on the board. Now, you're not going to get huge discounts because most Merloks are 1 or 2 or 3 mana. So it's not going to be incredible. But I think there are some really good options here. And the problem with Merlok decks as they sit today is that they're low cost. You draw them, you play them. So having your Merloks cost 1 often isn't that beneficial because you're like, well, I already played them last turn. I'm only top decking one now. So what's the point of making them cost 1? Well, we'll look at a couple more cards which help you to generate Merlok. So I think Scargill could kind of work really well in that option. I should also say that Sludge Slurper has also been announced already for Shaman, so that would definitely be an excellent card to go into this deck. And also there's a neutral card, I'll cover it in the neutral video, but it's called Toxfin, another really good neutral Merlok that would go into this deck. So let's have a look at some of the support that Scargill will have, because if you think about Scargill just on his own, 4-mana 4/4 isn't great stats for a Merlok. It's quite a lot of health for a Merlok, but you know, if you play this on turn 4 and then you're expecting to play it the next, get the discount the next turn, your opponent can probably quite easily move this. So you want to be having a big hand full of Merloks and then playing Scargill and then putting down as many Merloks as you can to get the benefit of that. So let's have a look at some of the support cards coming. And the next one is a 2-mana 2/3, so it's a River Crocolisk in stats. So reasonable, just standard really, but it's a rare card, Underbelly Anger. After you play a Merlok, add a random Merlok to your hand. So this sort of card is really important in Merlok decks, or any kind of token deck really, but really important for you to generate more fuel for your hand. So a very strong card in this type of deck because you've got lots of low cost Merloks, which means when you play this you should be able to play a couple more minions with it and then generate more Merloks in your hand to play on future turns. And if you've played this on the same board as Scargill, so you play Scargill for 4, then you play Underbelly Angler for 1, then you can play another Merlok and then just keep generating more Merloks, getting random ones into your hand, and then you could get the benefit of the Scargill as well. So this is a really important card for that kind of deck. Card generation is excellent in Hearthstone, and the fact that it only costs 2 mana, so it's very cheap, that means you can combo it with other cards, so you'll more than likely get this effect to happen. And if you get the effect to happen once, then this is already a good card. Like I said, a 2-mana 2/3 isn't going to set the world on fire, but get the extra card generation and it's fantastic in a Merlok deck. They've also got, for a 2-mana spell, a Soul of the Merlok. Deathrattle, give your minions Deathrattle, summon a 1/1 Merlok. So this again is an amazing card for a Merlok deck because Merloks have War Leader, which gives your minions +2 attack. That is a really important part of Merlok decks. And also Bloodlust is in Shaman, give all of your minions +3 attack. And the problem with Merlok decks is that all your minions generally have low health. If your opponent has an AoE, they just play it kind of turn 4, turn 5, turn 6, they play their AoE, and then your board's gone, you've spent all of your hand, and you've got nothing left. Well, if you've managed to put Soul of the Merlok on your minions, then it's really good because you get a board full of 1/1s. Yes, they're not especially powerful, but they're Merloks, and like I said before, you can then play a Bloodlust or a War Leader onto the board to get some huge power. So this is a really kind of important part, which again would cement some strength in a Merlok deck. There's also the Merlok Tidecaller, which would synergize with this. So if that's on the board, these will then buff that. There's also the Cold Light Seer, which can buff your minions. And Cold Light Seer is another really good card, which would go well with Scargill. So because if you play Scargill, play a bunch of low-cost minions, or low-cost Merloks, if you then lastly play a Cold Light Seer, you give them all +2 health, make them stick around, hopefully, until you can then play your Bloodlust next turn. So you can see the options already for this kind of Merlok deck. Some really good kind of support for it. I think Soul of the Merlok is good anti-AoE, so it protects you against AoE a little bit. So yeah, some really good interesting Shaman options for kind of like a Merlok deck. Next is a card which you can also put it in a Merlok deck, but this is a Shaman card which will probably be played in lots of other kind of decks, more value orientated decks, and also a really good spell in certain instances to randomly generate. So if you've got Hagatha the Witch out, you can generate this. It's called Mutate and it's 0 mana, which is very good. 0 mana spells are always pretty good. They always see some kind of play. But transform a friendly minion into a random one that costs 1 more. So it's just evolve. Unfortunately, it's not like Unstable Evolution that you can repeat. It's only one Mutate, transform a friendly minion into one that costs 1 more. But it can be really good on loads of, if you play big statted minions such as the new Hagatha, expensive minions that have got weak stats, sorry, then you can mutate it and then get more value out of that one minion. It's also really good to make efficient trades, so you trade in one of your minions. If it survives, you can play Mutate on it and then you get a brand new minion. With Evolve, we know that sometimes you get good results, sometimes you get bad results, but this is quite an interesting option. And with so much random card generation you can get from Shamans, I think this will probably not necessarily be one to put in your deck, but one that you'll want to pick up in certain instances. Finally, for Shaman, there's a card called Witch's Brew, which is an epic spell. 2 mana, restore 4 health, and repeatable this turn. Now, I've got no idea why this isn't Echo, because repeatable this turn just means that you can play it again and again and again until your mana runs out. So yeah, I'm not quite sure why it hasn't got Echo on there. Maybe they've just dropped that tagline. But for Shaman, healing's pretty important, especially if you're playing a control Shaman. There's the Omega Mind, which can help you with that. It's not great, but this is a good one that can be targeted, and it's flexible. So if you've got 10 mana, you can heal 20 health across either your minions or your own face, or a mix. So it's something that can be quite versatile, and it's kind of like Healing Rain was a strong card in certain decks, and I see this one as being a pretty decent one too. The problem is though, Healing Rain was fantastic to just either play when nothing's on the board and heal your face for 12, or just heal lots of minions. Whereas this one, you have to restore 4 health at a time, so it might be less efficient. So if you've got a minion that only needs 2 health restored, you're paying 2 mana to restore 2 health. And then you have to pay another 2 mana and another 2 mana. So if you were to heal 20 health across your board and your face for 10 mana, it's pretty slow. So I don't know whether this one will be strong enough, but it's an interesting option for healing for Shaman anyway. Next up, let's take a look at Paladin, and there is only one card left for Paladin, so unfortunately not any more dragon synergies for a dragon Paladin type of build, but this is a secret synergy, and it's a good card. It's called Mysterious Blade. It's a 2 mana 2/2, a rare card. Battlecry, if you control a secret, gain +1 attack. So now it's really easy for Paladins to play secrets now with Twin Spell, which is only 1 mana, cast a random secret. Then you can go into this and you've got a Fiery War Axe, or a pre-nerfed Fiery War Axe. So 2 mana 3/2 weapon is very strong because it helps you to control the board really easily. If you've got a Secret Keeper on the board and then you've played a secret and then you play this, it's a really good way to protect your Secret Keeper. Your Secret Keeper can be protected behind Noble Sacrifice as well, and it just can keep growing and snowballing, and that's really what a Secret Paladin needs, because they need to get ahead in the early game and finish your opponent before it gets to the late game, because there isn't often very much for them. So this is a very good weapon to help you control that. If you don't have a secret, would you play this on turn 2? Yes, I think you probably would. It depends on who you're playing against and the board, but if you haven't got a 2-drop to play, just a 2 mana 2/2 weapon is okay. It's fine. It will kill a lot of 2-drops, but the extra 1 attack's really important because it kills pretty much all 2-drops and a lot of 3-drops too. So you do want to get the Secret synergy off. But Secret Paladin's got some great synergies now. I can see that being a deck, probably not tier 1, but some pretty interesting early game with the Twin Spell, with the Legendary that causes secrets to cast twice. They've got Bellringer Sentry. There's loads of good options here. So a nice weapon for Secret Paladin, but unfortunately you don't play it in any other deck, any other type of Paladin deck. So alright, let's move on to Druid now, and Druid's got a couple of really good token cards here. I think Token Druid is definitely going to be a thing. There's some very strong cards. This one's called Acorn Bearer. It's a 1 mana, 2 attack, 1 health minion with a Deathrattle of add 2 1/1 squirrels to your hand. So this card is very good. 1-drops are very strong in Hearthstone because it helps you to get a presence on the board, and it helps you in a token deck especially because that's the sort of deck that wants minions on the board, cheap minions that they can buff later. So being able to play a 1-drop that can also contest the board is very strong. The 1 health could be better, but the 2 attack generally means you can contest your opponent's 1-drop and stay in the game. Now the Deathrattle of adding 2 1/1 squirrels to your hand just has synergies in a hand Druid deck, so very good in that respect. And it also has synergies in a token deck where you can play 2 1/1 cheap minions that you can then play your Powerful Wild and buff 2 more minions that are on the board. So it's a very good card in that type of deck. I also see this as maybe being a good 1-drop to play in other Druid decks. It depends how they shape up and what their early game is like, but it's a pretty nice 1 mana 2/1 that adds 2 1/1s to your hand. It's not as good a 1-drop as a Firefly, because a Firefly would definitely go into a token deck, but that's rotating out, so this is a very good alternative. I don't see it as being as good, but adding 2 tokens to your hand rather than just 1 that the Firefly might be, even though it's more expensive and less stats, maybe it would be better in a token deck. So a good card to go in that direction. And the next card is a very strong one for a token deck, and it's called Blessing of the Ancients. It's a spell that costs 3 mana, and it's Twin Spell. Give your minions +1/+1. So I said this is a strong spell. It's actually, when you look at it, it's pretty weak. So 3 mana, give your minions +1/+1. You can do that in much better ways with Power of the Wild. That's 2 mana, give your minions +1/+1. So why would you want to give them pay 3 mana for it? Well, the reason is Twin Spell. Just the flexibility of being able to play this twice is fantastic. And not only that, you can put 2 of these in your deck, so that's 4 times you can cast it, and then you can put 2 Power of the Wilds in your deck, so that's 6 times you can cast it. Then if you've played the Druid Legendary with Power of the Wild, you could get Power of the Wild back in your hand again and play it more and more times, and that's exactly what a token deck wants to do. They want to keep buffing their minions. And Twin Spell means you can do it either in the same turn twice, or you can do it in 2 consecutive turns, which helps this snowball effect, which is really, really important. So a very strong card. Well, it's fair. I think it's fair, but it's very strong in that type of deck because it gives you more options to buff your minions. I think this spell goes very well with Acorn Bearer and also Dreamway Guardians. So if you play your Acorn Bearer on turn 1, then you play Dreamway Guardians, you've already got 3 minions on the board, and then you can play the Twin Spell on turn 3, and then on turn 4 you can play the Twin Spell again, and also put 1 of your 1/1 squirrels that you got from your Aiken Bearer down. So you can see how quickly this can kind of spiral, and then you may even have a Power of the Wild in your hand as well to keep buffing it. So a very, very good set of token cards here for Druid, and I think that's going to be an archetype we see going forward. Alright, let's take a look at Mage now, starting with Conjurer's Calling, a 3 mana Twin Spell rare spell for Mage. Destroy a minion and summon 2 minions of the same cost to replace it. So this is quite interesting actually. So of course you can use it to destroy an enemy minion if you need to, but then it would summon 2 minions for your opponent. So you really want to be doing this on your own minions to get the value. And it kind of works in the same way as an evolve mechanic. So evolve is really good if you can make a trade with the minion and make your minion survive. Then you play an evolve on it, and the minion, you get a new minion with full health. And that's kind of what Conjurer's Calling can do. Summon 2 minions at the same cost that of a minion that you've killed. It's also something that would work really well on a Deathrattle that you want to kill on a certain turn. You can just play it, kill that minion and summon 2 more. And for 3 mana, that's not bad at all. It's also not bad to play on just a general big minion you've got. If you've got a big minion on the board and it's only got a few health left, if you play Twin Spell on it, you can summon 2 more big minions. So it can have its good uses there. It's quite a nice spell, actually. We've not seen something like this specifically in Mage. It feels like a Warlock class card to me. But this is going to be in Mage, and I really like this one. And 3 mana is not a lot to spend to summon 2 minions. So all you have to do is kill a minion that's above sort of 4-drop, and then you'll summon 2 copies of it. So you'll get the benefit from it. So it seems like a pretty decent card and a very interesting one. Next up is a really strong card for Mage. It's called Magic Dart Frog. 2 mana, 1 attack, 3 health beast. After you cast a spell, deal 1 damage to a random enemy minion. So this is very similar to a Flamewaker. A Flamewaker was very good in Mage. When you cast a spell, it does 2 damage amongst all enemies. Now, that was really strong. It was an extra mana cost to this. It had better stats. This card is good for board clear reasons, and what's important to note is it only does 1 damage to a random enemy minion. So the difference between that and Flamewaker is it only does 1 damage, and then it can't go to your opponent's face, which actually was really good with Flamewaker, because if you play Flamewaker on an empty board with something like Arcane Missiles, then you can do a bunch of damage to your opponent's face. Well, you can't actually do that with Magic Dart Frog, but it's a really good way to clear the board. It suddenly makes spells like Ray of Frost that we had a look at, which was the twin spell for Mage, and also Magic Trick. It makes those spells excellent. So Twin Spell, Ray of Frost, that's already 2 spells you could play for just 2 mana. Magic Trick you play for, and then that's 3 mana. And then you can discover a spell that costs 3 or less. You could discover a 0-cost spell, and you play it again. So you can see how this can all snowball. You can put 2 Magic Dart Frogs on the board. So it's a really nice kind of early game card to clear those smaller minions, just to really pave the way for the rest of your deck. So this is a very strong Mage card, and it looks to kind of fit into a small spell Mage. We've seen big spell, and now we're getting small spell. So yeah, pretty cool minion. Next is one that synergizes with it. This is the Kirin Tor TriCaster. It's a 4 mana, 3/3 spell damage plus 3. That's pretty huge. Spell damage plus 3 does not get printed on cards very often, and on a 4 mana card as well, so you do have mana left over to cast more spells. But it has the downside of spells cost 1 more. So this is especially the Magic Trick and Twin Ray of Frost, especially bad for those cards because they only cost 1 mana, and making them suddenly cost 2 means that it's all less effective. But you know, if you're playing Arcane Missiles, for 2 mana, they would deal 6 damage rather than just 3. Playing this with Shooting Star as well, you just play this, and on turn 6, with 2 mana left over for your Shooting Star, and then you do a bunch of damage to 3 minions on your opponent's board. You can also play the Sorcerer's Apprentice to negate the spells costing 1 more, so spells would cost their original cost. But yeah, you can see a lot of good uses for this. It's not the sort of thing that you would play to play a big spell, because I mean, it would be very effective with certain big spells, but you really want to be casting lots of smaller spells to try and get the benefit of this, lots of damage spells. So yeah, another good kind of card to go into Mage. Moving on now to Rogue, just 1 card for Rogue revealed. This is called Daring Escape. It's a 1 mana spell, and it returns all friendly minions to your hand. So again, this is a very, very, very cheap spell. It's only 1 mana. And it can return all your friendly minions on the board to your hand. So is that a good effect? In a lot of cases, no. But if you think about how strong Shadow Step can be with certain combos, putting Shadow Step in your deck surprisingly happens quite a lot. And Daring Escape just gives you that flexibility to use it on more than 1 minion. Now this could work very well with Pogo Hoppers. because you always want to get them back in your hand so you can buff them a bit bigger. It also works with Edwin Van Cleef because you can get him, you play him, get him back in your hand, then play him again, or you can get a bunch of other minions back and then play him. So it's really good, and the 1 mana, although it's much harder to play than a 0 mana spell in Shadow Step, you can obviously get these big combos of getting lots of minions back in your hand. The downside is you can't, if you've got a minion you don't want back in your hand, or you've got a particularly strong board, and all you want to bring back is one Pogo Hopper, it's not very good at all, because you're going to have to be returning all of your minions back to your hand. It's the same with a Vanish. Vanish is expensive because it's got a really powerful effect on your opponent. But if you flip it on the other side and do it just to yourself, do you really want to do that? Do you really want to just bring all your minions back to your hand? It could work. Loads of cool minions like Lackeys are pretty good to get back to your hand. So I think you would play this with King Togwaggle, the new one. He's got an excellent battle cry. And then you can play a couple of Lackeys and then play this to get them all back so you can play it again. So Lackeys, their bodies are only 1/1, so they're not really very good. But the strength comes with their battle cries. So that's where I see it as a strong deck. Anything that wants to play battle cries, this can work really well. But yeah, it's a tech card that you would put in a certain type of deck. But I think in a lot of instances, just a Shadow Step would be better. So there is actually another card for Rogue. This is called Waggle Pick. It's a 4 mana, 4 attack, 2 durability weapon. With the Deathrattle, return a random friendly minion to your hand and it costs 2 less. Now, Shadow Blade's rotating out for Rogue. That saw some play. So this is quite a nice, powerful weapon to play on turn 4. 4 damage is pretty good to do on a weapon. You can give it extra attack with various other Rogue cards. So it's pretty nice. And the Deathrattle, return a random friendly minion to your hand and it costs 2 less, is kind of bundles it in with a Shadow Step. Now, do you really want to do that? Yes, you would want to do it on Togwaggle. Ice Baron Togwaggle would be a very good target. But the problem is it's a random minion. You can't select it like you would select with Shadow Step. So you could bring back something you really didn't want to bring back. It does have the Deathrattle so you can control when it goes off, which is good, but that also makes it susceptible to the ooze, so your opponent can also control it if they have an ooze. So it's got its positives and negatives. I just don't know whether Rogue needs another way to bring cards back to the hand. Next up, let's take a look at Priest, and we've firstly got the Henchclan Shade Quill. It's a 4 mana, 4 attack, 7 health minion with the Deathrattle, restore 5 health to the enemy hero. So this card's good. I think it's a strong card. Playing a card with big stats is always really nice. So this card is probably overstatted by about 2 health. So a 4 mana 4/5 is a decent card to play, and this is a 4 mana 4/7, so it's got lots of health. So it's quite nice to play this against aggro decks because you can get a couple of really good efficient trades here. The downside being Deathrattle, restore 5 health to the enemy hero. But we saw with Zombie Chow is actually one of the best 1-drops ever in the game. The 1 mana 2/3 Deathrattle, restore 5 health to the enemy hero. That was one of the best 1-drops in the game because your enemy's health doesn't really matter initially, depending on what decks you're playing. But it's much better for you to gain control of the game and then finish your opponent off rather than just do lots of little bits of chip damage early on in the game. And so often the Deathrattle, restore 5 health to the enemy hero, isn't really much of an issue for you. So I like these sort of cards. Priest decks, I mean, they need some strong minions because they don't usually have very good 1 and 2 drops that can contest a board. This you can't play it till turn 4, so it's probably not as effective as a Zombie Chow, but it's a good minion to play on turn 4. So I expect this one to see some play. And it also synergizes with another card that I'll get onto in a second. But the next one is a pretty good anti-aggro card again. This is a 5 mana, 2 attack, 6 health minion with Taunt. So I think the Taunt's quite important. And it has a Deathrattle, destroy a random enemy minion. And it's called Convincing Infiltrator, and it's rare. So the stats on this one, in the reverse of the other card, are pretty bad. So it's like a 5 mana 4/4 in stats if you were to equal it out. So it's not great, but it does have the effect of Taunt, which counts for it, and also the huge Deathrattle, destroy random enemy minion. So we saw that on Obsidian Statue, and one of the best priest cards, and that was 9 mana, very expensive to play. Whereas this card, you can just play it on turn 5, and it works very well against aggro because of the high health, and the Deathrattle just helps you to control the board a little bit. Yes, you can't control what it kills, but I think this one would be very nice to play in a sort of control priest deck. It could be very good, and it's the sort of card as well that if you play it on turn 10 or you top deck it late game, it's still really nice to play because the taunt is really important. That means that your opponent has to kill it first before they can do any damage to your other minions or to your face, so they never know when this dies what the rest of their board's going to do. If they trade into this and then one minion they haven't attacked with dies, that just disrupts their whole turn. So this Deathrattle destroy random enemy minion effect can be very good. So I think in this instance it's a good minion to play, and you wouldn't be so concerned about the downside in the attack. And the next one is an interesting spell, Unsleeping Soul, which costs 4 mana, and it silences a friendly minion. We've seen that before in Priest, and then summon a copy of it. So obviously you don't want to do this on your big death rattles that are going to be important for you, but you could use it on some other minions such as the Hench Clan Shadequill. Just losing this death rattle means nothing to you, and then you get another Shadequill for 4 mana. And then if you've got 2 of them on the board, that's pretty powerful to have played early on in the game. So you would play this on turn 5 obviously on your Shadequill. That's pretty powerful. The downsides to it are if the minion is already damaged, then yes, it would summon a copy of a damaged minion, so you wouldn't get the full power of it. But there are some obvious real strengths here. It's silencing minions that can't attack. We've seen that in the game before. That's great because once you silence them, they can attack. Now obviously to get good value out of this, you want to be doing it on much bigger minions. So any minion that has rush, for example, that could be a good minion to silence because once they've used the rush on the first turn, you can then silence it. Now the second one won't have rush, but you're not really affecting the first minions. But giants are really a good target for this. I think Mountain Giant, if you could cheat that out for a very low cost, and then you play this on it, you silence the Mountain Giant, means nothing, and then you get another Mountain Giant on the board. So you get 2 8/8 minions. Very, very strong play. I think the Graveyard Terror is another card you could do it on. That does have Taunt, and you don't necessarily want to lose a Taunt. But to be honest, if you're getting another 8/7 minion for 4 mana, maybe it's worth it. Depending on the position you're in the game, maybe you don't want that Taunt, and maybe you don't need the Taunt, and you could just play Unsleeping Soul and get some good value. So this is another good value card for Priest. I don't think it will see a lot of play though, because cards like this, it requires you to have a target on the board, and if you don't have a good target on the board, then it's just a dead card in your hand. Although I quite like the effect, I think unless you put it on a giant, which you could do, it probably won't see much play. Okay, let's move on to Warrior now, and this is one that came out before the live stream that I didn't cover. This is called the Boom Reaver, a huge 10 mana cost minion, legendary for Warrior. Battlecry, summon a copy of a minion in your deck and give it rush. Now the stats of 7/9 are pretty bad. You don't really want to be playing a 10 mana minion for that cost, but if you're building a big Warrior deck, this is a good way to recruit a minion out. Because not only does it recruit the minion, which we know is a good, really strong mechanic, it summons a copy, which means that minion stays in the deck, so you could draw it again later, or you could actually recruit it again somehow. So the Boom Reaver could be okay, but you have to build your deck around it, and it's very difficult sometimes to build a deck without any low-cost minions. Do you want to play a Warrior without Acolyte of Pain, which is a very good kind of card draw tool for them? Now you wouldn't want to play Acolyte of Pain in this deck because if you pull that out on turn 10 it's not great. But if you put some big powerful minions, maybe put your Sarah in there as well, some big dragons, they also get rush. It's a strong play. Also, I think where this would become especially good is with Dr. Boom. So because it's a mech, this would also have rush if you've got Dr. Boom out. Also, you can discover it from Dr. Boom, and you can discover it from Omega Assembly. So in certain instances, this would be a good pickup. Depending on the type of game, if you've already got Dr. Boom equipped, you would probably think, okay, maybe I can spend 10 mana to get a 7 attack rush minion, which will also draw something out of my deck. I think that could be a good pickup at certain times, and probably where you'll see this card most. Otherwise, you'll just see it in a big warrior recruit deck, which is losing some tools, so maybe not good enough. And then finally for warrior, we've got Sweeping Strikes. This is a really interesting spell. It's a rare spell. 2 mana, give a minion, also damage minions next to whomever this attacks. So we've seen that effect in Hearthstone before, but never on a spell, to my knowledge. And this could be very good. Where I see this potentially is in a dragon deck. So Fire Tree Witch Doctor is a very good card to play that gives you a spell. So you wouldn't necessarily put Sweeping Strikes in your deck, but if you could discover it off of Fire Tree Witch Doctor, it could be very powerful. It's just such a really strong board control mechanic. In the early game, if you've got a 3 attack minion, you could potentially remove 3 minions from your opponent's board, which is very good for 2 mana. It can create some big trades, but then if you've got big dragons, then you can do even more damage just for 2 mana. So I don't know. In a control warrior deck, this might be good because you're not wanting to play too many minions, and the minions you do play are big, so that when you play Sweeping Strikes on it, it will have a more of an impact on the board. Of course, this would also work very well with poisonous minions. So some really interesting possibilities here. I don't know whether it's strong enough to actually take up 2 slots in your deck. Maybe it would just be 1, or maybe, like I said, it would just be a good one to discover off of a Fire Tree Witch Doctor or something. There is actually one more warrior card called Vicious Scrap Hound. 2 mana, 2/2 mech. Whenever this minion deals damage, gain that much armor. So this is pretty nice in a mech deck, because armor can be quite important for warrior, with shield slams, also with heavy metal, which seems to be getting a little bit of support. Maybe it will see some play. That's a 6 mana spell that summons a minion based on how much armor you've got. Now, the important thing about this card, I don't think it would ever see play if it wasn't a mech, but because it is a mech, I think it has some potential because it means you can magnetize to it. And that means then you can get more attack and then gain more armor. So if you've got Dr. Boom equipped, you play Vicious Scrap Hound, then you play a big magnetic mech onto it, maybe you play Ziliax onto it, then you're gaining 5 armor every time it attacks. That's where I think this would be good, because it will have Rush from Dr. Boom as well. If you play this on turn 2, a 2 mana 2/2, it's not very strong, but maybe you could attach the Bronze Gatekeeper to it, and then suddenly it's got 3 attack and a huge amount of health that will then be able to help you just generate quite a lot of armor and also have taunt and just be like a good minion. So I think that's where it could see play. Next up, let's look at Hunter, and we'll start with a pretty underwhelming spell in my opinion. This is called Rapid Fire. It's a 1 mana twin spell, deal 1 damage. So that means you'll get, after you play this, you'll get another 1 mana deal 1 damage spell into your hand. So Hunter already has Arcane Shot, so you have to compare these 2 cards because they cost the same. Arcane Shot does 2 damage, this only does 1. So what are the advantages of having Rapid Fire? Well, the advantages are you can play 2 spells cheaply. Sometimes it's better to play 2 cheap spells rather than 1 better spell, because there are cards that want you to play more spells, multiple spells in the same turn. There are some new neutrals coming, I'll show them on the screen, but I'll cover those when I get into the neutral reviews. So you could potentially play those minions and then get the benefit of playing 2 cheaper spells, but ultimately I think this is pretty underwhelming. I think probably where it's supposed to be used is with Thoradal, the Star's Fury, which is the weapon you get from Vanessa Windrunner. So that when you attack, you get spell damage +2. So what that means is you can deal 3 damage for 1 mana, and then you can do 3 damage again for 1 mana. So that's better than potentially just doing 4 damage with 1 Arcane Shot. So that's really where that could be quite good. If you do have Arcane Shot, you've got 2 Rapid Fires in your hands, then you can play a lot of that spell damage. So with I think having 2 copies of your twin spell in your hand when you play Thoradid could be quite good, because then you could do 12 damage just for 4 mana, which can be quite important really. So it's got its uses, but it's not something you want to play in a Zul'jin deck, because Zul'jin doesn't want to recast these. Because it could hit you, it could hit your own minions. It's not really going to be that effective. So a little bit underwhelming, but it does have some potential with Thoradid, I can see. Next is a Deathrattle Minion, which I think Hunter needs if they're going to make this Deathrattle deck work. I'm not convinced about it, but they've got some support. The Oblivitron is the main part of that. They've also got Fireworks Tech, which is a very good Deathrattle card. But this is a 3-mana 3/3 mech. Deathrattle, draw a mech from your deck. So it can draw itself, and it can draw other big mechs like your Oblivitron. So it does have some good uses, and Hunter doesn't have card draw. Master's Call is a very good card draw card, but it only draws beasts, so if you're not playing that type of deck, you don't really have many draw options. So this could be quite an important one to help you to draw lots of mechs, which is what Hunter kind of needs. It's a 3-mana 3/3, which isn't terrible, and it's got a nice Deathrattle. So yeah, not a bad card. Next is a 4-mana 3/3. It's called Arcane Fletcher. It's epic. Whenever you play a 1-cost minion, draw a spell from your deck. I don't really like this card. It's got a good effect, and it's very easy. Like I said, Hunter struggles with card draw, so yes, you can play quite a few 1-cost minions and get some good value out of drawing cards, but the downside is you've played 1-cost minions. Now, where there's some pretty huge synergies with Halazi, the Lynx, he fills your hand with 1-cost minions with Rush. Springpaw is also a very good one. So you do have some potential to be able to play this, but it only draws spells, it doesn't draw other minions. So you have to have spells in your deck that you want to draw. So if you're playing it with Halazi and maybe some other 1-drops, yes, you could get some good value out of it. But I don't know, it doesn't feel like a very good card to me. I think the weak stats and the fact that it's very easy for your opponent to remove might make it a little bit too weak for me. And the final card, again, I'm underwhelmed by this card too. This is called Hunting Party, and it's a 5-mana spell and copies all beasts in your hand. So again, this does kind of solve the issue of card draw, because you can just generate more cards in your hand. But for 5 mana, that's very expensive. Yes, you can get some huge value. Maybe you've got Witchwood Grizzly in your hand. Maybe you want another one. Maybe you've got King Crush. Maybe you've got Charged Devilsaur. You can get all extra copies of this, but you've spent 5 mana to do that. It's quite a lot. Hunter doesn't seem like the sort of card Hunter would usually play. Now, they are getting a lot of control-y type spells, which could potentially give them the time to play something like this, but for me, it just seems too expensive. So let's finish on Warlock, and we're starting with Inferno, which is a 3-mana rare spell. Give your demons +1 attack and deal 1 damage to all enemy minions. We don't often see these buffs and AoE bundled into one card, but it's clearly, Inferno is clearly a card aimed at Rafaam scheme. You know, you summon a bunch of 1/1 imps, and then you can give them +1 attack and deal 1 damage to enemy minions. Now, you can play 2 of these on 1 turn, which can do 2 damage to all enemy minions and give your imps +2 attack. So it does have some benefits. It's kind of works well in a zoo deck, and don't forget, it's not just imps that will get the attack, it's demons, so that does open it up to lots of more possibilities. It's the sort of thing that zoo needs, but honestly, I watched the card reveal stream and Rafaam scheme just does not seem very good. There's more synergy coming, which I'll explain to you, but they top decked it twice late game, and it was just 3 mana summon 1 minion. It was useless. I really can't see Rafaam's scheme being very good. I might be wrong, but it doesn't seem to work for me. So this is the other payoff that I was talking about. This is a 10 mana 8/8 demon, Jumbo Imp. Costs 1 less whenever a friendly demon dies while this is in your hand. So this is a lot like Corridor Creeper, and we all know how strong Corridor Creeper is. And this does have some really good kind of possibilities, because an 8/8 minion that can cost 1 less, you could potentially get it to 0 quite easily, is something that shouldn't be discounted. So obviously doubling imp and flame imp are other ways for you to summon imps that will die. So this, you know, this could be very good. It could be. They did need this card because they can summon imps in other ways than Rafaam Scheme. Because to be honest, I think Rafaam Scheme is so bad. I keep saying it, but I just don't see how you can hold on to it for long enough for it to be good. But let's say you played 3 with a card like this, Rafaam Scheme. You could play 3 mana and just summon 3 imps. You could be happy playing that in some instances because you know that you've got a card like this that will benefit from it. But it has to be in your hand. So if you haven't drawn it, then you're not going to get the synergies. And if you have drawn it, then it's another card in your hand that you can't play until other imps have died. So it's got its positives and negatives, but honestly, I would never discount a 8/8 demon that could eventually cost 0. So it has potential for sure, and you can put 2 of these in your deck as well. And finally for today, let's look at Darkest Hour, which is a 6 mana epic card. Destroy all friendly minions, and for each one, summon a random minion from your deck. This could be very good again with Rafaam Scheme. If you summon a bunch of low cost imps, that could be quite nice. And then let's say you manage to get Rafaam Scheme to 7 imps somehow. You spend 3 mana doing that, then you spend 6 doing this, and you summon a board of 7 minions from your deck. Kind of like what Gul'dan does. Maybe you've got some good demons in your deck that you could pull out. Destroying all friendly minions and not even impacting your opponent's board could be really bad. Alright guys, so that's all the class cards, so keep an eye out for my next video. I'll cover the neutral minions. There's some pretty cool ones in there as well, but I'm pretty hyped for this expansion. There's so many good value cards. I can't wait to get my hands on them. So thanks for watching guys, and I'll see you next time.